Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's bite-sized PD session, co-hosted by Music Constructed and West Music. My name is Jessica Palmer. I'm the project manager for Music Constructed, as well as an educational consultant for West Music. Over the next month, we are offering several bite-sized PDs intended to help you find teaching inspiration this spring, while at the same time not taking up too much of your precious personal time. This series, we are helping you understand the COVID relief Esser funding and how you can use it in your music room. Before we begin, I have just a few suggestions on how you can easily participate in this session. First of all, this is a live Zoom, so you can interact with each other and with the presenters. Please do remember to mute your microphone while our presenters are talking during the session. And if you do have questions, you can add them to the chat or save them to the end of the presentation. We should have plenty of time if you want to unmute and ask your question aloud or type it in the chat. And now let me introduce our two presenters. We have Leanne Cooner. He has been a music educator for 45 years. He received both his bachelor's and master's degree in music education from the University of Northern Iowa. He's been president of the Iowa Bandmasters Association, state chair of the American School Band Directors Association, president of the Iowa High School Music Association, and state chair of the Iowa Alliance for Arts Education. In 2012, he was named the national winner of the National Federation of High School Association Citation for contributions to music education. He served as the executive director of the IAAE since July of 2013. Our other presenter tonight is Jane Triplett. She's in her second year of retirement from a 35-year teaching career as a band director in Iowa. She was born and raised in Eldora, Iowa, and attended Iowa State University for her Bachelor of Music Education and American Band College at Southern Oregon University for her Master's in Music Education. Jane enjoys her position as adjunct professor at the University of Iowa, helping coordinate the instrumental techniques courses for music education majors. In her spare time, she supervises student teachers for Iowa State University, teaches private lessons, and works with West Music as an art advocate, playing in the Iowa City Community Band and traveling with her family. And without further ado, let's get started.
Well, good evening, everyone. And I just like to welcome everyone to this, our professional development session tonight. First, I'd just like to say thank you to Robin Walenta and West Music and to Jessica for making all of this possible. I think we have lots of great information that we want to share with you tonight. So again, thank you for making this possible. I think one of the things, as far as I think would be a safe assumption to say, is I think the fine arts programs and music programs have maybe suffered the most, I think, of anything, of all the educational programs that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We were some of the first that really were hit, and I think some ways are going to be some of the last that are going to be returned back to normal, whatever that normal is. In my work with the Iowa Alliance for Arts Education, with the mentoring program, and also as a student teaching supervisor for the University of Iowa, it's been interesting to travel around the state of Iowa and just see within our state how different music programs and fine arts programs have adapted. Some schools were in person from day one. Some schools were online from day one. Some kids were hybrid. Some schools flipped back and forth. And I've even had a student teacher that spent the entire semester in front of a laptop and never got to meet his students. But I think it is safe to say, no matter how it has affected across even the state of Iowa, it has been affected in many, many ways. And so what we're going to be talking about tonight is what we can do to assist. So this is why we called it the Iowa angle. So if we can just go to the next slide, Jessica. What I want to do quickly is just looking over the people that are on the list who've attended. I know some of you were there here last week and some of you weren't. And I quickly, for those that were not here last week, just to kind of get you caught up. We're going to be talking about Esser Funding. We're going to be talking about American Relief Plan. So what Esser is short for is Elementary, Secondary, and Educational Relief Fund. And you can see there when you look at what has been infused for ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds in the state of Iowa, a lot of money has been put for K-12 education. When you put it with the American Rescue Plan, it's going to be over $1 billion has going to be infused into K-12 education in the state of Iowa. So as you can see, just at the bottom there, public, charter, and nonprofit K-12 schools are eligible for ESSER funds, as well as private schools. One of the important things that has been brought out is how the money was figured out, what was going to be appropriate for your school district was based on the Title I formula for schools. But non-Title I schools also will receive funds as well. Another point that Lynn and Bob made last week that is really important is it was just that the formula for Title I funds was used, not the restrictions for Title I. So that's important. There's a separate set of parameters that ESSER funding will follow. Okay, so Jessica, if we go on to the next one. What we're talking about tonight is the American Rescue Plan, or sometimes called ESSER 3. This was just signed into law in March. Iowa is going to get $775 million for K-12 education. $775 million. 90% of this is going to go directly to school districts. And you can see funds can be used to address disruptions to learning, and then also talking about SEL needs of the students. After the session last week that Bob and Lynn did, the Department of Education, I think the very next day, released their guidance. And so this is information that is brand new. So if we just go to the next slide. Okay, if you go to the Department of Education website, the guidance document is about 10 or 12 pages long. And I know you didn't want me to go through 10 or 12 pages of information. But so I just did some highlights here. Like I said, out of the $775 million, $697 million is going to local school districts. That's a lot of money. I think one of the things Lynn had mentioned last week is there's some of the school districts may not even need to know what to do with some of this money. Well, tonight we are going to give you the ideas of what you can do with this money. This is unprecedented. And I don't know how many times I have used that word in the last 14 months, but I'm going to use it one more time. This money that can be used for K-12 education, specifically for music and arts education, is incredible. It will never, ever, ever happen again in our lifetimes. And so what we need to do is we need to capitalize on this information. Now, you can just see the next few bullet points kind of show you just some of the parameters of what this funding can be used on. Jane is going to go into more detail of that in a little bit. But you look at supporting a safe return to school, safe operations of schools, activities to address learning loss, summer learning, some enrichment activities, and then building capacity to promote healthy and safety learning environments. And then again, supporting social, emotional, and mental health and academic needs. Just as a quick aside, the Alliance is partnering with the Iowa Arts Council and the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs and the Iowa Department of Education on Arts Education Summit. That's going to be held on June 17th virtually. And I was already sharing with Jane and Jessica and Robin, we already have over 200 people signed up for this session. It's free for educators. Just a quick plug, you can go on the Iowa Department of Education website. You can go on the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs website, the Alliance website, and get registered. But the point I'm making is the whole purpose of this entire conference is on fine arts instruction and its connection to social emotional learning. This is super, super important. And a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about as you are going through and designing programs can be funded by these programs. When I was talking about ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funding, okay, one of the things to remember is those funds may still not be spent by your school districts. And I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. One of the things that's important to look at when we were talking about supporting a safe return to in-person learning, One of the important things about this fund is that the use of these funds are retroactive to March of 2020. So if you have spent funds and did not apply to ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, you can apply, because you'll have proof of purchase of whatever it was. Any money you have spent is retroactive to March of 2020. Now, like I said, you can go to the DE website, get all of the information downloaded as far as what the parameters are. I just went to the DE website and I just thought, I just wanted to get an example of, just to kind of get of the price range or the amount of money that is going to be available to school districts. So I just picked 5 schools. I started with a 1A school. Okay, in Iowa, that's our smallest group of schools. I went to Janesville, Iowa, a small town outside of Waverly. Their school district is going to get $139,000 just from ESSER 3. I went to a 2A school, Ackley, Geneva, Wellsburg, Speedboat Rock, AGWSR, okay? A 2A school, $750,000. I live in Hampton. Hampton Dumont is a small 3A school, 1.4 million. So you can look at how much that amount of money in a smaller school system like Hampton, what our school district can do with $1.4 million for K-12 education. Now, let's go to the 2 largest school districts in the state. Cedar Rapids, 32 million. Des Moines, $92 million. Now, that's not the Des Moines suburbs, that's Des Moines Public Schools. So we're talking about some serious money here. And so it's one of those things where even though there's a lot of all the subject areas under a well-rounded education can apply, but when you look at that amount of money, there's a lot of money to go around. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. The one thing to remember is this is a one-time funding opportunity. Any unspent funds, when it gets to the deadline, go back to the federal government. So there's no carryover on this. So it's basically, like I said, a use it or lose it. And then here are the deadlines. ESSER 1 funds have to be spent by September 30th of 2022. ESSER 2, same date, a year later, 2023. Now, in talking to school districts around the state, because I've been doing some checking as far as various school districts, some school districts I've talked to said they have already spent their ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds before fine arts people have gotten to them. Okay, totally fine. But there's also ESSER 3. I've also talked to some school districts where they haven't spent their ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds yet. Well, I should say maybe ESSER 2 would maybe be but so that's a thing to keep in mind, to check. Are there any ESSER 2 funds left, or do we go on to ESSER 3? Now, this is going to kind of connect in what Jane's going to talk about now, is the ESSER 3 funds can be applied for right now. And they can be applied for, this funds must be expended by September 30th, 2023. So we have time to get these things set up. So again, that's just taking a 50-minute summary and getting it down into 10, because I told Jane I would give her time to get through all this stuff. So Jane, I think okay, I got one more slide. Yep, and then we're going to go on. Okay, just some things to continue, and then we're going to segue right into Jane. Look at the bullet points. I think what we want to look at is the third. Are the funds used? Are they reasonable and necessary? The next one, do they promote equity? Do they support students' return to the classroom? Now, your proposal just has to meet one of these. Final words of advice before Jane is going to illuminate you on how to get this done. In talking to people who have filled out applications, some people who have filled out forms, what are some words of advice you have? And one of the first ones, you need to think strategically. You need to look at what is going to help my program the best. Is this something that I can do now? Is it something that looks to the future? Secondly, you need to connect the dots for the administrator. The administrator has a million things on their plate right now. If you do your homework and go and say, this is what I need, this is why I need it, this is how it fits under the guidelines. And I think the third thing is just, this is an opportunity for us to think differently. I remember when we started, we did a session for West Music, and with Robin had us do one. Oh gosh, it was at the beginning of the pandemic last spring. And one of the things, we were meeting with teachers, and one of the things we talked about is, let's not concentrate on what we can't do. Let's concentrate on what we can do. Are there ways that we can look at education in a different way to make it prosper? So with that in mind, Jane is now going to talk about some very specific things on how to make this all work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Leon. Fantastic information and a load of things to make our minds whirl. Jessica, go ahead and start up with my PowerPoint, if you would, please.
I am doing that right now. While I'm getting this going, I just want to remind everyone that while we are Iowa focused tonight, a lot of these things are going to apply to your home state. So this is great information for you.
Absolutely. All right, just a second here.
There we go.
Hope you can hear it.
Money, 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 Mr. Funny, in a rich times world.
Yes, money, 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 folks. This is going to be crazy. Money, money, money from ABBA. I had to do it. I'm sorry. Hope you can hear it. Alexa, stop. It's incredible the amount of money we're talking about here. Money, money, money. I've had this in my head all day long. So I finally pulled it up on my Alexa app because it is incredible. Like Leon has said, this is historic. We're not going to see this again in our lifetime, ladies and gentlemen. This is something we have to take advantage of. Fine arts teachers, we have to spread the word. We have to tell our friends. We have to be active. We have to be doing our homework right now. And we've got to do something to access this money. But I just don't feel like people are going, yeah, there's money out there. We're here to tell you to spread the word. Help us spread the word. To access the money, here we go. It's going to vary from district to district, but you're basically going to have to go to your administration and plead your case. But you've got to do your homework. It might be your fine arts supervisor. It might be your principal. It might be a business manager. But whatever it is, whoever it is, it needs to be the chain of command. Some of you know me. Some of you don't. I am married to an administrator. Talk about coming home, complain about administrators, and he comes home and complains about teachers. No, not really. I'm just kidding. But we learn a lot from each other. And when I started to do this, I went running to his office several times going, what would an administrator want to hear? Is this right? Is this what you want? So I'm talking and learning administrator talk and have been for over 30 years with living with the man. But here it goes. Chain of command. You need to know your chain of command. When you need something for your program, who are you going to? Is it always starting with your principal and then working way up? If you don't like the first answer, get permission to go to the next person. Work with them, be kind with them, and find out what needs to go on. There's more that needs to go on than just going to them, but that's where it starts. That's where it's going to start the conversation. I'm going to give you all sorts of steps to prepare and how to do your homework before you go to that administrator, but that's where we're headed to get the access. That's our door, because they're the ones that are going to be doing the applications. Okay, they're the ones that are going to get online. They're the ones that are going to have the money and the access and know where it's going. I'm going to talk to you about how to create a list. I'm going to talk to you about how to get bids. I'm going to talk to you about connecting it to the criteria, because that's what the administrators need to see. They need to be able to connect the dots, and you can do it for them if you do your homework, and then you can walk in and say, hey, administrators, here's where it is. And they will appreciate that, because it will make sense to the administrator brain. Most of our administrators, I don't know about you guys, but when I was teaching, very few times did I have fine arts people that walked into being an administrator later. I was very fortunate, believe it or not, in one of my second teaching job, I taught 5 through 12 and not band, and 9 through 12 choir. And yet my principal was an old choir, not old, he wouldn't like that, was a former choir director, and my superintendent was a former band director. Never going to happen for anybody, but it did for me. And so when I went in and asked for things, it was very easy. They already knew, I didn't have to justify it. This, we're going to need to justify what we're requesting. And I'll talk about that as well too for that administrator meeting. Next slide, please, Jessica. So the basic things here is do your homework. And I'm trying to simplify it as much as I possibly can. You can't go to your administrator or whoever it is in chain of command and tell you do your homework. And it starts here. It starts with sharing this information right here. I try to make it as easy as possible, make it a 3-step process. Some of them, yeah, you got a couple things to do in each one. So I cheated a little bit, but the basic is 3-step process. Number 1, you're going to need to create a list with bids. So you're going to create a list of, okay, how has COVID affected my program? What have I already spent money on? Because remember, it's retroactive. You can go back to March of 2020 when COVID hit, and whatever you spent your money on, if that was from your regular budget, you have those receipts. You can get that money and put it in there and cover those things. So, but you want to create a list of anything that COVID made a difference, or how to move forward from COVID. Let's find the silver lining from COVID, ladies and gentlemen, and let's find that silver lining and do something for our programs that's going to take us out of this whole pandemic with a better step for all of our students. You'll get bids from your local sales representatives. All right. So that list and get bids, you're going to put that all together. I'm going to go into deeper with each one of these 3 ideas in just a little bit. So hang on. We'll create a list and we'll put bids with it. Then you're going to have to match that to the criteria. Bob Morrison last week had presented, and I have the website or a link that can take you to this as well. He had 15 different pieces of criteria that basically show up on this ESSER 3. What he did was amazing. And I just wanted to share it again on this week's webinar, because what he said was, okay, we're going to get this. And that connects with criteria number 3, number 5, number 7. Boom. Administrators love that. That's administrator talk. Asking my husband, he's like, oh my gosh. He says, that's exactly what they need to see. They can justify it. You can advocate for your program. He can justify it when he takes it to the school board or whatever they need to do. That is going to help your administrator understand this is good for students. This is good for your program. This is good for our school, and a good use of the ESSER 3 money. So matching the criteria, I'll go through that in more depth in a moment. Contacting your administrator, and that's another couple steps of involved with that as well too, sub steps there. But contacting your administrator, hopefully in person or by email, but having a meeting, I can't stress this enough, in person. You really need to sit down. Don't email them all the information, please. Oh, please sit down with them, have a meeting when they have time, and you can both sit down and you can justify and advocate for your program and say, this Fine Arts really would like some of this ESSER 3 money, and see what you can do and follow up with them. So more information there. Next slide, please, Jessica. So let's dig in to this 3-step process that I'm talking about and get organized on exactly what needs to happen. If you aren't organized and you walk in and you don't have, they say, okay, I want this, this, and this in my program. And they'll say, well, how much is it? Well, then you got to leave, and then you got to go get those prices and then come back again. You don't want to waste your administrator's time. You just don't. I'll guarantee you. I've lived with an administrator for so many years. It's just boggled my brain to think how many hours he was not home because they put in so much time, or they're just trying to please so many different people. They're trying to help all the students and all the teachers and things like that. Be organized, be professional, and approach them with all the information they need. Be ready before they even ask the next question to have that answer for them. All right, coming up next, please. All right, so now we're going to go into our 3-step process and talking a little bit about creating that list and putting the bids with it. It's a really easy process, but here's what you want to think about while you're thinking about your list. Be creative. Be creative about what's going to help your students right now. Think of where they are now. Think where they need to be or should be. And then start thinking about, what did we have to buy during the COVID time? What did we need when we do that? I mean, all these are ideas right here. These are just some basic ideas on it. But again, Bob Morrison had the list of 15. I just kind of summarizing them right here and combined a few of them. The list you need to keep in mind right here is basically what you need to connect your list with. It can be activities authorized by the ESEA. You can do anything COVID response. I mean, this could be anything from the PPE that they need to wear, the masks, the bell covers. Maybe you need one music stand per student now. Maybe you need to get shields. Maybe you need to get, there's just a whole lot of COVID response things that can probably go into that one category. Low-income students, disabilities, English language learners, English second language learners, minorities, homeless, and foster care students, anything to do to help them because they've been hit hard as well from the COVID. Anything for your program to reach out to them can be considered part of this list. Professional development. Maybe you need to get together with your staff, your department, and say, how can we move forward and help these students more? How can we need to plan. We need to bring people in. You can help get money to pay for that. You can get money to help pay for all those extra hours and things like that. Any sanitizing supplies. Puppy pads people are using for their spit valves. But hey, we have to do it. So cleaning supplies or anything that helps to clean mouthpieces or equipment, things like that. Planning and coordinating during long-term closures. If you have to get your staff together again for that, that can be a whole nother step in it. Educational technology. This includes software, hardware, connectivity, anything to do with technology as you're reaching out to students that you might have had to spend money for. I know a lot of schools bought Music First software, and that way they could have students playing and recording and sending it back to them and part of the grading and anything software, hardware, connectivity that helps connect with that student. I know some of the students needed to have some laptops, things like that. Anything with the educational technology during COVID that you needed can make the difference. Mental health services and supports for our students, anything with your program to them for that. Summer or after school programs. I don't know about you, but I am looking at 6th graders right now. I teach part-time at a nearby school, and the 6th graders are playing at a 5th grade level. It's the way it is right now. But what can we do for them? Get creative. Maybe they can need a summer program this summer to help boost them up. And maybe the incoming 5th grade. I mean, you can work 2 different classes if you want to. Some summer programs might be the answer to some of that. It might be online, might be in person. After school programs to help raise those students back to where they should be or where they can be. Remedial issues, facility repairs, improvements for our air quality, things like that. Facility concerns, if you don't have enough space, what can you do with your room? Things like that. Anything as far as health and safety with COVID can make a huge difference on this. Go ahead, Jessica. These are just a few. These are not the full 15, but they are covering just about everything. To get more specific with creating your ideas, to make sure I didn't miss anything and just to give you more thoughts, you need to have maybe more mouthpieces. I don't know. Do you spray the mouthpieces between students if they're sharing a tuba? No, shouldn't do that anymore. Should not do that anymore. You're going to need more mouthpieces. Additional instruments. I used to teach in a school for years and years where we shared tubas. They didn't share mouthpieces, but they shared tubas. Really not a good idea for our safety and health right now. So maybe you need more tubas. Maybe you need more euphoniums. Maybe you need more horns. Whatever your program may need as far as additional instruments for health and safety, that could be a huge part. Cleaning of instruments, that can be a huge part of it too. Oh, Leslie, you got your microphone on there, dear.
Stop doing that, Kelly.
Anyway, cleaning of instruments. More than ever, your instruments need to be safely cleaned. Sometimes just doing it in a wash tub in your room anymore may not cut it. You need to get the professional cleaning done. I strongly recommend you start making that list and figure out what instruments need to be cleaned this summer or next fall or in between semesters or whatever. Start making that plan now. Or maybe you've already had some cleaned once COVID started. That's one of those that you can look back to March 2020 and say, oh my gosh, I cleaned all my instruments last summer and it just really, took my budget way down. This is something you can go back and retro plan on what needs to happen there. PPE, as I mentioned, masks, bell covers, music stand per student, a lot safer that way so you can social distance. Technology, as I've mentioned, materials for remote learners, additional staff. Now keep in mind, please, that this has a little bit more tricky, I think. You don't want to hire somebody and say, yeah, you've got a new job, fantastic, glad to have you on board. But it's a finite number of dollars that we're dealing with. So you have to really plan out and let that staff member know this is only going to be 1 year, or this is only going to be a 2-year thing, or maybe this is just for the summer. But you'll have the money, or you can request the money to get additional staff for maybe your summer program so that you can help those 5th graders or 6th graders catch up a little bit. Get a summer camp going, have a lot of fun, bring in additional staff to help you with that. Some ideas, but it's not a staff member forever. Keep that in mind. Beginner testing kits. I know we get those in and out of West Music. Maybe you should buy some and keep them for safety of your own program, and that you can do some special cleaning and keep them in your own. Support for next year planning. Maybe your department or your staff needs to get together and have some meetings on that. You can get some money towards that planning, or have somebody come in and say, how did you do it? Have them do it as a professional development person. Go ahead, Jessica. I'm talking fast. Okay, so number 2 step, match to the criteria. This one, to me, and what I'm learning from administrator talk, is extremely important for our administrators. Excuse me. The Bob Morrison 15 regulations for allowable uses for the ARP, American Rescue Plan, is really important. Like I said, at the end of this, I will have that website or link to show you to be able to get to those 15 by number. But at this point, here's an example. So let's say you put down you'd like some instruments, or you need to get instruments because you can't double up on them anymore. You need some supplies for the instruments so that you're not doubling up on things anymore. Or maybe the new stands, or separate stands for everybody. Materials to ensure health and safety. This is all on regulation 3, 5, and 13. And that all has to do with safety, and another one to do with being healthy and making sure that we are keeping clear of our virus within the rooms, and also another way to promote good health within your room. PPE, cleaning supplies, sanitation, all fall under 3, 5, and 7. Facility concerns, your air quality, your need of space, things like that, 13, 15, 14, 15, summer programs. You can see that specifically you can add those numbers right to your list that you've created and got bids for, so that you can show the administrator point blank, this is how I'm justifying it. This is how I'd like to help my students stay safe. This is how I want to make a difference in my classroom so that we can continue or get back to a more normal, as close to whatever normal is, close as possible to normal we can get, and get going again. Like Leanne said at the beginning, and it's so true. Every program has had a little bit different experience this year, and it's been crazy to be in person from day 1 and straight through to they're in person. Now they're all online, and in person and they're all online, or some students in person and then they're all, for 2 weeks for quarantine. Hopefully we can find it in the safety of some of these purchases to be able to tell our administrators, we want to get back to normal as close as we can anyway, and this is the way we can possibly do it, or at least work with that administrator to possibly do it. Next slide, please. So then we get to the administrator. Here's my administrator talk. My husband hopefully will be proud. So as I said before, number 1, contact them. I think the first one's okay by email. My husband even said that would be okay too, but make sure the rest of it is in person, please, because that administrator, you need face-to-face. They need to have that conversation with all the answers answered right away. You don't want to draw it out and do email question and then answer, email question and then answer. It's going to prolong the whole process. You need to sit down with them, have all your materials for them, have them have a set, you have a set. It's kind of like a job interview. You want to have your resume, then have extra people. I have extra resumes for everybody in the room. If you don't have one, have that extra material for them. and talk to whichever administrators that you need to for that chain of command. So very important. Once you set that appointment up, make sure you've done your homework, sit down with them, have that appointment. What you're doing in that appointment is you're talking administrator talk. You're not going to talk, don't talk emotionally from the heart. We can do that really, really well to wear our emotions on our sleeves for fine arts teachers. We do that well because that's our job. That's our life, is to feel music and to live music and to do music. Administrators look at things black and white because they know they've got to go to their school board members and say, this is going to justify, is justified by da, da, da. They need data. They need data. One of the things that I came up also was showing them that data. And here's another thing for your homework and preparation. As I was talking about, okay, my sixth graders right now are barely ahead of what fifth graders have been doing. I mean, it's just fifth and sixth, it's really messed up right now with online lessons. It's really hard to get them to the same place. And they don't play every day or every other day in rehearsals or something like that. So a lot of programs have a lot of trouble with some students in grade levels, in fact, that are behind a little bit. Figure out, do your homework, what is the usual place that they would be? Figure out from, a large grouping of your students. Well, usually my sixth graders are in such and such book, Standards of Excellence book, and my sixth graders are usually, they're almost halfway done or almost done with the second book by the time they get done with their their fifth grade year or whatever. Figure out where they usually are for your program and then go and look at this year and say, here's the difference in data. Be specific. I have this group of students, we're usually at this point. Another way to measure it. So just throwing out numbers, we use grade level music for our concert bands. So let's picture with our fifth grade, if you have a fifth grade beginner band, you might be using 0.5 or grade half for that fifth grade band. Is your sixth grade band then using grade 1? Or did they have to use grade half this year because they had a rough start as a fifth grade? And then grade 7, yeah, I usually am pushing like a 1.5 with the grade 7 and then going into 2 by the end of the 7th grade year. Not this year. Not this year, couldn't do it. Use that data and what your knowledge is of what grade level your bands usually are playing on a normal year. And then compare that to where they are now with a COVID year. Oh my gosh, your administrator is going to go, really? That's hard data, ladies and gentlemen. Your administrators need to hear that we have a problem. And we as arts have suffered as well. Every subject has suffered within our schools, but let's face it, I think, maybe I'm prejudiced because I'm mixing more with music people more than any of them, but it's a lot tougher to teach a beginner instrument online. It's a lot tougher to have band rehearsals online. You can't do it. You can't do it. They can do all sorts of things and you can be creative, and you have been all year long to make it happen because we're music people or we're fine arts teachers. We make it happen because we're creative people. We can make it happen. But is it still getting our students to the same level? Figure out hard data, present that to your administrator. Then you have to advocate for your program and justify. Justification is basically matching it to the criteria that I talked about. Advocating for your program, I had a couple of comments that I heard that I think this is quite amazing. I love these thoughts. And this is administrator talk. They need to hear this, but I'm going to look at my notes just to make sure I don't miss one here. And this is like I'm preaching to the choir, I know, because it's like, you guys all know this stuff, but I'm saying these because you need to know these are things your administrators need to hear you say. They may know it, but they may not think of this when you have the meeting. So I want you to pass this on. Here's one. It's all about your students. Make sure you're stressing it's always all about the students. They need to know this helps our students. This is about our students. Don't say about your program. Don't say things like that. Say it's about the students. It's always should be about the students anyway. And you mean that, but say that. Say that. Many students come to school because of the music program. You know that. I know that. Make sure your administrator knows that. So many students have to have something to connect to in their schools to come to school for. How many students have we heard say, because I love choir so much, I come to school. Because I love band so much, That's my favorite part of the day. That's why, I'm in school. Oh, they'd be in school anyway, but they'll say band's my favorite part of the day, or orchestra's my favorite part of the day. Awesome. It's not why they come to school totally, but if it's their favorite part of the day, it's their connection to their school. It's their connection to their school community. It's a connection to their director. It's a connection to so many things in life. And your administrator needs to be reminded of that. We have students that come to school, might not come to school, sadly, if it weren't for the band program or the band director or the choir program or the choir director or the orchestra or the art teacher or the fine arts. We have a lot of students that come just for the fine arts. Our teacher-student relationships are special because we get to know them a little bit more, maybe through lessons or just because of our classroom activities, different than a math room, different than the science room. Sure, they connect, but we have a deeper connection quite often because of what our subject entails. And we spend a little more time with them usually. We have concerts, we have festivals to go to, we have auditions to go to, honor bands, things like that. We could just spend a little more time with them one-on-one and things like that. We also spend sometimes 2, 3, or even 4 years with our students. A lot of times a science teacher, a math teacher will have 1 year with them. That's that other part of our connection and relationship. Remind your administrators. Remind your administrators. This is not just an investment in your program or in your students for 1 year. It's going to go for 2 or 3 or 4 years in some of your programs, some of these funds. That's the big thing as far as those comments that I wanted to say as far as advocating for your program, that the administrators like to hear and need to hear and need to be reminded of, and then justifying. Follow up with your administrator. If you are to the point where you feel like they're going to help you out to do the application, then they'll be able to follow through and take care of it. You follow it up, you get it done, woohoo. If they're not, and I stress it's okay, but don't give up. Ask them, should I talk to somebody else? Is there something else I need to do? Be kind, but be questioning, be persistent and be patient and keep questioning. Well, where is the money going? Is that, fine arts getting some of this? Don't be afraid to keep asking questions. Keep that door open. Don't slam it. Don't be rude. Just keep asking questions. Be persistent, be patient, but follow up in person. I would recommend. They don't want a bunch more emails. So if you do this in person, after the contact, do everything else in person, you will probably get more results. All right, great. Show data, we did that. Let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, Jessica, you're so good. Be a part of the music worksheets. I have to admit, my husband was like, what? Let me see this. This is amazing. And he said this was like the perfect administrative talk, because it had all the information in black and white, hard data. Administrators can justify it when they go to their school board or wherever they need to go to the superintendent next or whatever. They really need this kind of stuff to, even if the community is going, why is the money going here? Be a part of the music worksheets. There's the link right there. Is an amazing set of worksheets that you can just simply fill out and present to your, as much as you want or as much as you don't want, few sheets, one sheet, not another sheet, to your administrator. This is administrator talk again. It's Scott Lang. Scott Lang had this all devised in this wonderful, wonderful webinar that was so impressive. And there's some of it you may not be interested in, but there's still a lot of really good stuff of administrators. The impact sheet, for example, is basically a worksheet that shows what hours you've lost with your students. How many hours you usually get on a normal year for rehearsals, in a normal year for lessons, and then how many you actually got in this COVID year in rehearsals, in lessons. How many, how many hours did you usually get to take students to honor bands? How many hours did they get to do, did they miss out on solo ensemble festivals, state large group contests, going to a district honor band or all sorts of activities that you might have. It even goes through community hours, things that your bands, your orchestras, your choirs, your fine arts teachers might have missed out on this year. That impact sheet shows the hours, shows the time, shows the loss. It's great data. Equipment sheet basically lists all the instruments. You write down, you know, I have this many players, I have this, but I'm going to need this many instruments. It shows the extra instruments you need. You no longer can double up probably on marimbas or keyboard instruments. There's no way you can double up on tubas, on euphoniums. Maybe you need, you know, more mouthpieces, things like. It's an equipment sheet with all the instruments, what you have and what you're going to need. And I recommend don't shoot for the moon. Don't write down, you know, professional 4-valve rotary valve tubas. You don't need those. Be sensible. Don't go crazy, but be sensible and get some of the instruments that you know will be a safer, healthier room for your students. And that's, again, comes right back to the students. Instrument cleaning, another great worksheet that just shows all the instruments. You can call up your local music store and say, you know, what is it for the cost of a chemical wash for this instrument? What's for this? How can we clean this instrument? How can we take care of instruments? So that you have an idea of what kind of cleaning needs to happen, or what already happened that you need and would like to get reimbursed for, so that you don't haven't lost your entire budget because of a COVID year and you didn't have a choice, and etc. So instrument cleaning, another wonderful worksheet where you just fill it in. It shows, you can fill in how many, you know, trumpets you need cleaned or whatever. Technology, method books, like I said, technology, software, hardware, connectivity, or method books. Most of the time, they're probably not sharing lesson books, but we used to share our warm-up books in band. Can't do that anymore. You have to have one per stand. So maybe you need another set of warm-up books. All sorts of things that could happen there. We loved using like some leather folders. Can't share those anymore. You might need something of that sort of thing to go in there. Check out Scott Lang's Be a Part of the Music worksheets, and I'll guarantee you, my husband was astounded as an administrator. Your husband, or your administrator will probably be astounded. Don't tell him I said that, Leanne. Your administrator will probably be astounded at that hard factual data. All right, what's next, Jessica? Next slide.
It's coming.
Is it not coming?
There it
Woo!
goes.
Yeah, get into the resources. Oh my gosh, that looks so messy on there. I'm so sorry. But let me just give you a quick one. A lot of this is some of the same information I've already talked about that you can look up. Some of them that I want to draw your attention to on these links in particular. Some of these are directly to Iowa and Iowa's information for ESSER 3 in particular. If you just go to the COVID relief data ed.gov, you're going to find the whole country, and you can click on Iowa from there as well too, or any state. So those of you that are from other states that are joining us this evening, thanks for joining us, by the way, you can find your state on some of these, on that link that we have on there. So that's a nationwide link for that. The next one, it talks more about the Esser funds and a tracker funds. And that's another one that's nationwide. That will give you more information about where the money is. And it's some of the similar information came from what Leanne has got and gotten tonight to share with you. Then we get into the Iowa side of things. So the educateiowa.gov, you've got your document there. That is your ESSER 2 fund allocations. Okay, so if you look it up there, if they say, oh, ESSER 1's already gone, fine, okay, that's all right. Well, here's ESSER 2. You can look it up school by school there. I didn't put them together, sorry, I probably should have, but in the middle of the next box over to the right there, you'll see the Educate Iowa there. There's the ESSER 3 location allocations. Crazy numbers. I was talking to a friend who's ICE's on here tonight. I'm looking up a school and I'm going, they're saying like, oh, I think my principal's saying that money's already gone for ESSER 3. That would really surprise me because you've got $1.6 million coming to your district. So yeah, some of it might be allocated already, but keep asking. That's my advice. Just keep asking around, you know, and keep working with those people to see. But there's just an extraordinary amount of money there. The music constructed. Jessica, there's a plug for you guys, musicconstructed.com. That tool is actually from Lynn Tuttle, I believe. And there's also more information there from Bob Morrison as well. That's Lynn's version of the 1, 2, 3. I just changed it up just a little bit, but she's got the same ideas I do, is to do your homework, and she gives you more ideas how to dig into that. Then I put the Scott Lang, they'll be a part of the music down there link. And then the last link on there, the tiny URL, is Bob Morrison's. That's the one where he gives you the 15 regulations for allowable uses. Really important to connect the dots for our administrators on that, and really will be helpful to you, to guide you as you're thinking of what for COVID did I buy, or what do I need, or where am I going with this, and to match it up with that criteria. It's spelled out for you right there, all 15 points. I just knew you wouldn't want to hear all 15 points from me tonight. I didn't need to go there, but to give you the highlights and to just tell you, I think this is an easy process. If you do your homework and those 3 easy steps, make sure that you go ahead and create a list with your bids on it, match that up to your criteria, and then contact your administrator and get that meeting done, and keep following up. 3 basic things that you need to do. Is it going to take some work? Yeah. Is it worth it for your program? And is it worth it for your students? Oh yeah. We need to be creative in these times right now. We need to be able to look out for our programs. And I know you have been, and you've been working your behinds off all year to be creative, to figure out how to deal with COVID and to keep going with your program. But now we have the funds to make it easier, to make it happen, to make it just a little bit more, what do I want to say, maybe comfortable for everybody to move forward a safety and health-wise situation way. So to me, just in closing my part, and then we'll open it up for questions. This is an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, for being creative and giving your program a boost. This is the silver lining of COVID, if there ever is one, because it's been awful. But this is the silver lining, is that now we have some money to work with to create our programs a new way, to do more with our programs than we've ever done before with an historic amount of money. Revive your program since COVID, and it could be even better than ever because we have the resources now. We have the resources available. We just need to do the work to get there and get it. Music programs have sustained a huge amount of loss, contact hours, relationships, trying to learn how to play their instruments in that relationship that we really find as being rewarding. We can go back and we can get there, but we're going to need to do the work. Stress to your administrator, and I think Leanne said this earlier as well, stress to your administrator equity. Yes, the other programs, the other subjects have also taken a hit, but if you show them that impact sheet of how many hours and difference and loss of contact with your students and contact with rehearsals and lessons and all of those things, I think fine arts have taken even a bigger hit if they see those numbers. Equity is all we're after for our students. Stop sharing instruments, music stands, percussion equipment. Get new storage for those new instruments. That's another plus that we could probably help ourselves with. We're never going to see this amount of money again in our lifetime. It's historic. How many times are we going to say it, Leon? We got to say it many, many times, but it is historic, and we need to do something about it to make a difference for our students' lives and music and the arts in their lives. We all know it's important, but we need to pass the word along. There is my contact information, my email address for West Music, if you will, my phone number. Please feel free to contact me, Leon, myself. We are more than happy to answer questions now and later. If you have any questions, if you want me to take you through the process, I'd be more than happy to take it step by step. If you need me to talk, I got one school this Friday morning. If you need me to talk to maybe your cohorts, your colleagues, and explain some of the same things, maybe in a smaller nutshell, what we've done, I'd be more than happy to do that. But let's just get connected, and let me know how I can help you get connected with these funds and start to make those requests. And oh my gosh, I've got a minute to spare, 6 minutes for questions. I see a whole bunch of stuff in there, Jessica. What do we need to do?
Yeah, so here's an interesting question that was posed to the chat. Boosters were not able to raise nearly as much money for the program due to less concession revenue.
That's on that impact sheet.
Program.
Yeah. That's on that, that's on that impact sheet. Your booster program and the loss of their hours and community resources is on that impact sheet. Keep going, so sorry.
Oh, You answered it.
Yeah,
Does that qualify? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's, I believe, a part of that impact sheet. I know it talked about community, and I think boosters were a big part of it. That's another loss of revenue for you. Absolutely a part of the impact sheet. Bring it up and bring it forth to them. It can qualify. Next.
Looks like Mark has lots of questions. Mark, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or if you want to continue in the chat, that's fine.
Okay, I am in a very unique situation as I am replacing a teacher who I'm long-term subbing for first. I applied for the job, I received the job. She was in the job for 27 years. And the last 2 of which her knees were totally bad. She was running a show choir, doing K4, doing 9/12 choir with bad knees, couldn't move around. And COVID exacerbated a lot of these things. There was no ability to do any kind of things with lessons. They were pulled from their normal classroom and they were forced to sit in horrible seats in the auditorium. So when I came in, the IHSMA had changed their rules about social distancing. I could put them back in their classroom. We could do some real work. In 4 weeks, we've gotten a lot of work done. I have since also been indicated by the administration and am waiting for board approval that I will be the new director in the fall. One thing that I have been warned about by the school and by my piano tuner, who is also a family friend, is that the piano that's in the classroom desperately needs to be replaced. We've been trying to save some money, but the concessions issue was a big deal for us. Beyond that, because of COVID, because also of this teacher's growing physical inabilities, the K4 program was very, very depressed. They weren't playing instruments. They were not doing a lot of activities, and you could tell that they were just simply demoralized. So when I came in and I was getting down on my knees and doing circle games and getting to play ORF instruments, there was a big uptick in student engagement. And I would like to expand, not greatly, but maybe 3 or 4 new ORF instruments. The ones that I have are in some disrepair. Adding some other cheaper instruments. I mean, I'm not talking about more than $4,000 worth of stuff in that side. The piano, I'd like to try to find $30K for. Beyond that, this teacher did not have a lot of good organization in her building, and there was a lot of creep from 30 years. I'm sure a lot of very veteran teachers know this. You get behind on certain things. The library is all in filing cabinets. It's very hard to find things. And I feel very much like a lot of facilities maintenance items could easily be reasoned out. There are bugs in some of the closets. There's some sanitary issues involved in some of these things.
You have your work cut out for you, Mark.
Oh my God, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that I'm 36.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple, my friend. Keep it simple. Prioritize what you need to do. You've gone off on several different needs. Absolutely. But what you need to do is prioritize. What do you want to do with the program? Figure out what your priorities are. And this leads me into something I didn't mention. So thank you very much for your mentioning this. When you go to your administrators, everybody, don't expect to get everything. You can shoot high. You can come in with a large amount of things, but be prepared to say, I really, really need these things are my priority. And if we could still get a few more things, we'll get that. But have a plan A, have a plan B, have a plan C. Plan A, shoot for the moon if you want to. But don't look too greedy, because then they're going to be really put off. Go for plan B if they need to, that's a bit more than what we're planning, but prioritize what you want to get done with your program. Don't expect to get everything, and just plan on getting just your top, depending on the price. If that piano is the most important thing, or if the ORF instruments are the most important thing you want to get after, prioritize, make your list, match it to the criteria, plead your case, and justify. Leanne, anything to that?
I would say I would maybe repurpose my funds. If there's some things that I need, but COVID, make some things that connect to COVID and move that money in the other pot, and then buy what you need.
This was what I was thinking, actually, because I know there are some general funds in other places, and there has been money saved toward a piano. So I don't know that I would even necessarily ask for all the funds for a given process. I might say, okay, I'll negotiate with you on this. You fill the gap in my funding so I can get this done, and we can make this work. That way I don't ask for the whole thing, but I still can get it done even though I don't have it all right there.
Yeah, Leon's right, though. Prioritize and then match it to COVID, whatever you can do to match it to COVID. But this is a great opportunity for you, Mark. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions out there? Where are we at, Jessica?
We probably have time for one more question if anybody has.
Anyone?
I bring up one piece of information I forgot to mention. Okay.
Sure, Leon.
And some community college people here. This is just for the state of Iowa. There are COVID relief funds set aside for colleges and colleges.
Mhm.
It's called the GEAR Fund. It's Governor's Emergency Educational Relief. And so these can be for any junior colleges, or universities that are accredited. They can be public or private schools. All they have to be is they have to be eligible for Title IV funds in the state of Iowa. There's a specific set of money set aside for those schools. So if you go to the Department of Education, it's just called the GEAR Fund, Governor's Emergency Educational Relief. Okay.
Yeah. And one more. I see Jason. Did somebody answer Jason's question about staffing section? Yeah, if you're looking at that, to clarify that supplemental staff, if you can show that the clinicians, the marching band techs, anybody school staff that is going to be supplemental or, you know, a professional development or something, if you can show that that's going to help bring them back up out of the COVID concerns connected to COVID, show them, you know, our marching band has suffered big time in the program. We need this clinician to help step us up, but make it about COVID. You absolutely can be clinicians and things like that, or a professional development speaker or something like that. Jason, go for it.
We talked to a fine arts supervisor from a school, and that's exactly what they did, because they had a whole list of things, and they said, we found our biggest need was going to be students going from 8th grade to high school. Because they said, if I have kids in 5th and 6th grade or kids in 7th and 8th grade together, I've got some time. But that jump from 8th grade to 9th grade band was really huge. So that's what they're going to do with their Esser funds, is do summer supplemental education targeted for the 8th graders. I love that. It was very strategic. They didn't say we needed it for everyone. And I think they're going to get it, so it's like the idea is thinking strategically. Anyway.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent.
All right. Well, Leon and Jane, thank you so much for helping us to better understand this funding and some specific steps that we can all take to go to our administration and try and get some of this for our classroom. We have lots of resources available on Music Constructed. If you visit our website, it's the very top banner at the top of the page. You can click on that and it will take you to our resource page where there's a ton of information. We also have our educational consultants at West Music. If you need a quote or need some more information on how much things are going to cost or what that's going to look like, give us a call. We can help you there too. Our next bite-sized PD session is next week on Monday, May 3rd. We are welcoming back Ashley Lohr to talk about grant writing and more funding tips. So it's money, money, money again, as well as Dr. Scott Edgar, who's going to be completing his series on building social emotional competence. So we'd love to see you there. You can learn more and sign up for this free session at Music Constructed. On behalf of the Music Constructed and West Music team, I want to thank you again for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.